الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم: وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين وأحسن القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن المنافقين في الدرك الأسفل من النار ولن تجد لهم نصيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Every individual has a different way of looking at life. You want to call it a worldview or a perception of reality. Everybody has his own way, through his experiences, through his past, through what he's seen as a child, and through what he's lived through, even as an adult. He's built a certain worldview in which he perceives the life in which he lives in. Yet of course life has a number of wavelengths and a number of levels to be perceived. That's why we'll know that a wise person sees things differently than a foolish person. Because that's why the famous quote comes in and tells you and I that it's not what you see, it's how you see it. That two individuals may be seeing the same exact thing, yet one person may be seeing something, yet another may be seeing something else. In other words, there's a depth of perception in certain mentalities of individuals that may not exist as much in certain minds. That's why a Muslim is encouraged to be aware, encouraged to understand what's going on specifically in his surroundings, not only on a physical level. Yes, perhaps in the time of the Imams alayhim salam, they must be aware of physical attacks on the battlefield, to know when their friend may need assistance and when their enemy may be planning an attack. Yet for the most part, insan is not always cognizant and always feeling a physical attack coming towards him. Of course, unless if you live in Detroit, but that's a different story. Because you're not always feeling as if there's a physical attack coming at you. Society comes and throws what? It throws at us social attacks. That a certain means shaitan may come at you through, be it the opposite, be it music, whatever it may be. For the most part, there are social attacks that shaitan throws at you and I. That's why when you come to the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and shows us a number of divergences that exist. What do I mean by divergences? Because we know very well that sometimes what we see isn't in reality what is the essence of that which is being seen. And that which is said many times is not what is meant. That we know there may be ulterior motives in the certain things that we see or certain things that we hear. In other words, what we see many times is not the reality of things. That's why one of the most beautiful du'as that was left behind to us is the dua that says, Allahumma arini al-haqqa haqqan fa'attabi'ah wal-batila batilan fa'ajtanibah. We say, oh Allah, show me truth as truth so I can follow it. And show me falsehood as falsehood so I can shun it. In other words, sometimes truth can be seen as falsehood in this world that we live in. And falsehood could be seen as truth. Alaykum salam. That we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, oh Allah, show me truth as truth. Oh Allah, don't make me a victim of one who simply sees face value and not somebody who sees the essence of things. Oh Allah, if this is truth, send the message to my mind that this is truth. Because me, insan, I don't have the capabilities to ultimately decipher between haqq and batil without your hidayah, without your ability, Ya Allah. So Ya Allah, show me haqq as haqq and show me batil as batil. haqq so I can follow it, and batil so I can shun it. For this reason, we'll notice that there are a number of clashes, because we're mentioning that the outside isn't sometimes what the inside is. There are a number of divergences in society when the outside does not match the inside. Let's look at 3 examples in this presentation about where divergences can clash with one another in society, where sometimes what's seen is not parallel with what reality is. Firstly, we'll see sometimes the outside is good, but the inside is evil. Nafaqa, noon, fa, qaf is mentioned within the whole Quran 111 times. The root word of nifaq, hypocrisy. Allah Azza wa Jal not only dedicates a whole chapter to the hypocrites within the Holy Quran, but He tells us that the lowest level of hell is for these kinds of individuals. Because we know that there are 7 different layers of hell. Allah Azza wa Jal comes and speaks about them within the Holy Quran. Yeah, He says the lowest of them is for the hypocrite. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ وَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُمْ نَصِيرًا. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us. He says the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, are in the lowest darak of nar. Now, firstly, Allah Azza wa Jal, He doesn't say daraj, He says darak. What's the difference between darak and daraj? Because we know when Allah Azza wa Jal refers to good stages, He says daraj. Allah Azza wa Jal refers, for example, speaking to Ibrahim, ala nabiyana wa ala alihi wa alayhi salam. He says, نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَنْ نَشَاءُ. Along these lines, Allah Azza wa Jal comes and tells us, we raise darajat to whom we will. In other words, Allah Azza wa Jal says, verses along the line, using the word darajat. Darajat, alam taba, it comes and tells us the difference between darajat and between darakat. Daraj is ascending, whereas darak is descending. A daraj, Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about in positive ways, because when you see stairs which are going, for example, stairs of this minbar, you see them, they're coming up. Yet stairs which go down, Allah Azza wa Jal refers to what? As darak. That's why He comes and He says, Azza wa Jal, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ. The hypocrites are in the lowest of the darak stages of the hell. What are the different stages of hell? 7 of them. Firstly, you have Jahannam. You know, sometimes when we refer to hell, we say Jahannam. Jahannam is only one of the stages, and it's the least painful. Why was it named Jahannam? Because it comes from the word Jaham. It performs Jaham in the faces of the ones who it welcomes. It welcomes them in a very detestable fashion. Yes? And it gives them the pain which they deserve. This is the least of them. You then come to the second stage, which is known as lava, an intense fire, which eats the feet and the hands of the one who's thrown into it. You then come into the third stage, which they refer to as saqar. Saqar, what does he do? Saqar, he eats the meat without the bones. His diet is a little bit more specific. You then go down the line, you begin to see different kinds of layers. For example, Jahannam, you have then lava, then saqar, they come and they tell you about hatama. Hatama, what does it do? Hatama, it tells you that it has embers, which are as big as the universe, embers of fire. Now, when we mention these things, the goal isn't to bring fear or to get somebody afraid of religion. It's simply to let myself know when I want to commit a sin, let me realize what kind of punishment does Allah Azza wa Jal have for me. That at the same time, we're encouraged to emphasize on the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. More than His wrath and His anger, the anger does exist. Because when we see what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sent as, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, we see that Rasulullah was not sent only as a Bashir, he was sent as a Nadir as well. Just as you have the bubbly and the happy and the merciful aspects of the religion, you have these aspects as well. Hatama being the 4th level, you then come to that which is known as, you mentioned Jahannam, you mentioned lava, you mentioned Sa'ir or Saqar, you then come to lava and Sa'ir. Sa'ir as well, it's known for having 300 different forms of punishment. Each form of punishment, there's a house dedicated within it, and within each house there are 300 different forms of punishment. You then continue down the line, and you begin to see that Allah Azza wa Jal comes and speaks to you about the worst of them, which is known as Al-Hawiyah. This Hawiyah is a dangerous one. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 1,000 years, He burned the fire until it became red. For another 1,000 years, He burned it until it became, after it became red, it became white. And after white, for another 1,000 years, it became black, and it mixes with the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This seventh layer, if we were to come to a conclusion that it's the last layer of those seven, Allah Azza wa Jalla comes and tells us that this layer has been dedicated for the munafiqeen. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ وَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُمْ نَصِيرًا. Now question, why did Allah Azza wa Jalla dedicate the last of the layers for the munafiqeen? Because we know there are many different enemies within the religion of Islam. You have the non-Muslims, for example, who may serve as enemies towards the religion within the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam, the polytheists, and so on and so forth. Why have the munafiqeen been given the lowest level of Jahannam? Let's see, or the lowest level of Nar. Because we know a munafiq is much different than one who clearly expresses his enmity. A munafiq, he leads the prayers. He dresses like a Muslim. He acts like a Muslim, but there's a beast within him waiting to be untamed. A very dangerous mixture. And this was the biggest problem that Islam faced in the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam. You'll notice that you had many people who came under the umbrella of Islam, yet spewed their beliefs into the religion, Judaic beliefs. Yet for instance, when we look at Saddam was he a Jew? Last time I checked, Saddam was a Muslim. Yazid, last time we checked, was he a Muslim or a Christian? He was a Muslim. Osama bin Laden, Muslim or Christian? Muslim. Muawiyah, Muslim or Christian? Apparently they were Muslims. The danger is where? Outside he says Islam, yet inside he was the utmost enemy of the religion of Islam. You look at, for example, somebody like Ka'b al-Ahbar, this Yemeni Jew who came to the religion of Islam, who then later became an advisor to Muawiyah. How does this work? A Muslim, an advisor to one of the greatest enemies of Islam. You'll notice, under the garb of coming to Islam, he begins to spew his beliefs. Abdullah ibn Salam, another example. Wahab ibn Munabbih, another example. All Jews who apparently came to the religion of Islam and began to spew their Judaic belief. That's why you'll come across a number of narrations which are known as what? Isra'iliyat. Why is it called Isra'iliyat? Because they came from Bani Israel. Judaic beliefs that found their ways in the religion. A clear example is fasting on the 10th of Muharram. Question, who told us we're supposed to be fasting on the 10th of Muharram? Rasulullah, he sees that there are Jews who began to fast on a day where Musa split the sea. He said, beautiful. Same day Musa split the sea is the day where Abu Abdullah al-Hussein was killed, 10th of Muharram. Therefore, let's fast as well. The man who came to complete the teachings that Musa came forward with is taking teachings from Musa. That what do you begin to see? You begin to see Wahab ibn Munabbih, Ka'b al-Ahbar, Abdullah ibn Salam, Jews who apparently came to the religion of Islam and began to spew their teachings in this religion. That these people didn't say we're non-Muslims. No. He said, I'm a Muslim. And through saying this, he began to change certain things, or at least we could say attempted to change certain things within the religion. That's why when you come to the narrations, you'll notice that Imam Ali alayhi salam doesn't ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect him from his enemies. He says, my enemies, I'll deal with them. Look at the dua. He says, Allahumma kfini sharra ashabi. فَأَمَّا أَعْدَائِي أَنَا كَفِيلٌ بِهِمْ. He says, oh Allah, protect me from the evil of who? My friends or my enemies? No, my friends. As for my enemies, I'll deal with them, Ya Allah. Save me from my friends. Because the worst enemy isn't the one who says, I'm an enemy. The worst enemy is the one who has enmity under the shell of friendship. That's why you'll notice when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would be in Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Abu Hurairah comes and tells us. Who? Abu Hurairah. He comes and he tells us that Rasulullah on Yawm al-Qiyamah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would begin to see ones who he saw as his greatest of friends going to a certain place. He would say, excuse me, where are you taking these people? He would say, these people are going to Jahannam. He would say, I don't understand. These were my greatest companions. Why are they going to Jahannam? No. The reply would come to him saying, Ya Rasulullah, they became apostates after you. You don't know what they did after you, Ya Rasulullah. We'll notice what happened with Rasulullah. He died thinking his greatest enemies were his greatest friends. Only did he realize that his greatest friends were indeed his greatest enemies. That the Imam alayhi salam comes and says, protect me from my friends. Rasulullah finds out his greatest companions were indeed some of his greatest enemies who later on left the religion or became ones who became enemies of the religion. That's why the greatest blessing that Allah Azza wa Jal can give an individual is to expose to him a fake friend. Many of us have had perhaps experiences where we thought somebody was our greatest friend and we would give him our secrets A hadith comes and says, don't be too close of a friend to somebody, for one day he'll be your enemy. And don't be too great of an enemy to somebody, for one day he'll be your friend. That sometimes Allah Azza wa Jal comes and exposes certain individuals. How do we know people? In 3 different situations. When you do business with him. Why? Because his trustworthiness is being tested. When it comes to money, it's a very easy way. It's an expose. It's how we know people. When it comes to money, true colors tend to come out. Business, traveling, because when you travel, you have ups and downs of traveling. It can get difficult, it can get easy. Emotions are tested, mentalities are poked at, right? Your temper becomes something tested. And also when you live with somebody, sometimes you've noticed that somebody looks as if he's one of the greatest believers, yet you go and you live with him for 3 days, you see Salat al-Subh he misses, Salat al-Dhuhr he prays it with Salat all of Maghrib, Subh, Asr, he prays it all at one time. He squeezes it, he makes a nice sandwich and he prays it all at one time. You'll begin to realize when you live with somebody, different colors begin to come out. Allah Azza wa Jal comes and says that وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُم. Look at the verse. Allah dedicated the whole verse for these types of people. How big of a disease are they to society? That on the outside, what is he? He's appealing. Yet on the inside, you'll find he's concealing something very great. What do we begin to see? You begin to see that Allah Azza wa Jal comes and gives us a very interesting incident within the Holy Quran about the hypocrites. And He begins to give us descriptions about them. Let's see what does Allah Azza wa Jal say. He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ وَإِنْ يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ كَأَنَّهُمْ خُشُبٌ مُسَنَّدًا. Allah Azza wa Jal comes and describes Christians. He says, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُهُمْ, when you see them, they impress you. تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ, their body looks very nice. You'll see him, he looks like a mu'min, top notch. This guy is a mu'min. When you listen to them, what do you begin to see? You begin to notice that they're like hollow pieces of timber. خُشُبٌ مُسَنَّدًا. Why does Allah Azza wa Jal compare a hypocrite to a hollow piece of timber? 3 different reasons. Firstly, some come and say that a piece of timber, you'll notice that in the time of revelation, Rasulullah would speak, they would lay on the walls like hollow pieces of timber. They wouldn't benefit anything from revelation. Certain people. Another view comes and says, no, hollow pieces of timber could be used. Yet these people did not make use of the potential that they had within them, because a piece of wood, you can use it, and yet if you leave it, it becomes of no benefit. Along these lines, the second view comes and says, the third view is very interesting. Third view comes and says, no. They're being compared to hollow pieces of timber. Why? Because a hollow piece of timber, when it comes time for a tornado, it doesn't bend down to protect itself. It's always standing up. There's a very vital line in this view, and a very interesting one. It tells us that hypocrites, when it comes time for difficulty and for time of ease, you see him, he's standing, he's ready to look for the opportunity. Wherever there's an opportunity, you'll see him there. Because a hypocrite, what's his nature? He's everywhere yet nowhere. He's with everyone yet he's with no one. You see him, he's everywhere. See, I just saw you with these guys. They're enemies. How do you go to these same people? No. He's everywhere yet nowhere. He's in every group, right? What is the verse? What does the hadith come and tell us? That there are 3 kinds of people. One who gives knowledge, one who seeks knowledge, and the third type, what are they? If you're not a giver or a taker, Imam Amir al-Mu'minin comes and says there's a third group. They are what? They are just like scattered sheep. In other words, whichever leader he sees, this guy looks good, I'm going to run after him. أَمَّا عَالِمٌ رَبَّانِي أَوْ مُتَعَلِّمٌ عَلَى سَبِيلِ نَجَاةٍ, or what? Or he begins to compare them to a group of sheep. لا يستفيدون بنور العلم شيئا ولا يركنوا إلى ركن وثيق فينجو. Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam comes and tells you and I along these lines. He says the third are همج رعاء, scattered sheep. That you'll notice the hypocrite, what does he do? Wherever there's an opportunity, you'll see him, he's there. If it compromises his beliefs, disregard this, irrelevant. It has no importance to what's being discussed. If his principle is being compromised, he doesn't mind. If there's an opportunity, you'll see him, he's there. That's why when you come and look at this certain narration or these certain incidents that we have in history, it comes and shows us that a mu'min, if his principles aren't being compromised, there's no problem with showing mercy. Sometimes we think 24/7 we're supposed to be showing anger and firmness and stubbornness when it comes to the enemy. No. If there is no compromise of the beliefs, there's no problem in showing mercy. That's why you'll notice when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Battle of Hudaybiyah, you'll see that Suhail would come to him. They would want to enter the land. They would be prevented entrance into the land to perform their Umrah or their Hajj, as history may have mentioned to us. They would be denied entrance. All of a sudden, Suhail comes. He tells him, Ya Rasulullah, they have made an agreement. Take your people and take what you have and come back next year, or come back another time at least. This time is not for you, Ya Rasulullah. He would say, Ya Rasulullah, we know you're a man of mercy. Ya Rasulullah, we know you're a man of justice. He would say, Suhail, get to the point. What are you trying to tell me? He tells me, Ya Rasulullah, they're denying you entrance. He would say, let us do a treaty upon this. They would bring the treaty so that they can confirm what they came to agreement with. He would call Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam to write. He would tell him, Ya Ali, begin to write. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Suhail tells him, Bismillah who? Tells him, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He told him, if we believed Allah is Rahman ar-Rahim, we wouldn't have this agreement in the first place. He said, no, repeat, remove it. Put in the name of God, not Rahman ar-Rahim. Remove it, we don't agree with this. He would tell him to do these certain things along these lines. He would then begin to write from Rasulullah to those who he was speaking to. He would tell him, what do you mean Rasulullah? If I believed you were Rasulullah, would we have this agreement in the first place? He would tell him no. He would tell him, remove Rasulullah. Ali ibn Abi Talib wouldn't remove it. He would tell him, Ya Ali, I told you Rasulullah, remove it. He told him, Ya Rasulullah, how can I remove the name of Nubuwwah from your name? Look at the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam to the Prophet. He would tell him, how could I remove the name of Nubuwwah from your name, Ya Rasulullah? He would tell him, no, I'm telling you to do this. He would begin to do what? He would remove it. He would say, I wouldn't be able to. He'd tell him, remove it. Rasulullah himself, as some may have mentioned, he would go and remove it himself. He would tell him, Ya Ali, there will come a time where you'll face a similar situation. Then what do you mean? He told him, wait, history will come and it will repeat itself. Years pass by, Safin comes across. Ubaydullah ibn Rafi' comes. Amr ibn al-As, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. La'natullahi ta'ala alayhi, what does he say? He tells him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's time to make an agreement. He begins to write, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What do you mean, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? Bismillah, if we believed he was Rahman ar-Rahim, we believed in the same Lord, we don't have this problem. He would say, erase it. Amir al-Mu'mineen would wait. Some may have mentioned 3 days. He would come to agreement. He would say, fine, I'd remove it. He would write from Amir al-Mu'mineen. No, we don't believe you're Amir al-Mu'mineen. If we believe the following, we would have this issue. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at the notion. The example to be taken from here is what? Rasulullah, he noticed, if there isn't a compromise of his beliefs, there's no problem showing mercy. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, if there's no compromise to my beliefs, then there's no problem showing mercy. Because mercy is a vital element of the quality of a mu'min. Allah Azza wa Jal comes and tells him, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He tells him, if you were to be hard-hearted, they would have shunned away from you, Ya Rasulullah. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. It's from the mercy of Allah that you are lenient toward them. That a mu'min, his character is what? He's not too lenient that people can use him. No. And he's not too firm that people tend to shun away from him. There's a balance in the character of the mu'min, because we know there are people out there that like to take advantage of certain individuals. Therefore Allah or the hadith comes and says, don't be too lenient, that people abuse you. You're nothing but a tool in their hand. A yes man, they can do whatever they want to get you to say what they want. And don't be too firm that people tend to find it difficult to approach you. For this reason, we'll notice that the hadith comes and says, a Muslim is like a wheat when a tornado comes by. A tornado comes by, what does the piece of wheat do? It bows down. It protects itself. Yet it says the munafiq or the hypocrite is like a stubborn piece of wood. When the hurricane or tornado comes across, it breaks it due to its stubbornness. That hypocrite, one day he'll realize that he'll get broken. Why? Because wherever there's an opportunity, he runs after it. He doesn't run after principle, he runs after personal interest. And that's why you'll notice that a hypocrite, what does he do? His inside is evil, yet his outside is good. That's why Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, he describes the hypocrite to a certain type of fruit. He says that this type of fruit, on the outside it looks like a watermelon, yet on the inside it has one of the most bitter of tastes. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ وَإِنْ يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ كَأَنَّهُمْ خُشُبٌ مُسَنَّدًا. Like hollow pieces of timber. Flip it 180 degrees. The inside is evil for the hypocrite, yet the outside is good. Flip it upside down, you'll see it becomes one of the most important beliefs that we have in Shia belief system, which is known as taqiyya. Taqiyya is what? Taqiyya is the exact opposite of a hypocrite. A hypocrite, he's made his outside what? Good. Yeah, his inside evil. One who practices taqiyya, what does he do? His inside is what? It's good. Yet on the inside, he may show certain things which he doesn't agree with. You'll notice, you go into our respected brothers' books, before even our books, you'll notice there's a strong emphasis on taqiyya. Because how many times have they said, these Shia, don't talk to them. I've heard even brothers from the respected sect, they come and they say, we've been told to not talk to you because you'll change our mind. I told them that really shows how firm you are in your belief. If you're afraid of talking to somebody, then how much trust do you have in your own beliefs? They say they practice taqiyya. They'll tell you one thing, but they believe in another. This taqiyya is not in my books only. It's in your books. You'll see Sunan al-Bayhaqi. These are respected books in our brother's side. Sunan al-Bayhaqi, Mustadrak al-Hakim. These are all Al-Tabaqat al-Kubra. All of these books by Ibn Sa'ad, by Jalal al-Din al-Suyuti, Ad-Durr al-Manthur. You'll think these famous books by our respected brothers. You'll notice taqiyya is very much mentioned even within their books. They come and they say taqiyya is what? When the tongue says something but the heart isn't fine with it. This is actually what it is. The tongue says, okay, I may say certain things to protect my life, yet my heart doesn't believe in it. A munafiq, no. He says good with his heart, but his belief has something else. One who practices taqiyya is the exact opposite. His tongue says something which he may not believe in, but his heart has maintained its belief. Otherwise, I ask you a question. Certain people, they say taqiyya is unacceptable. Ammar bin Yasir, one who performed taqiyya, would Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam have praised somebody who performed taqiyya if taqiyya was a sin? What does he say in reference to Ammar bin Yasir? This unbelievable companion of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, what does he say? He says Ammar, and companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says Ammar is filled with faith from the crown on his head to the sole of his feet. Look at the words of Ammar bin Yasir in reference to Ammar bin Yasir. Furthermore, another narration says Ammar is with truth, and truth is with Ammar. That we know perhaps only two individuals have been given this narration. Aliyun ma'al haq wal haq ma'ali, and Ammar is with truth, and truth is with Ammar. In another narration, it says Ammar, you will be killed by the unjust, and the last of that which you will drink is a cup of yogurt. That Rasulullah comes and tells him, تَقْتُلَكَ الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. When was he killed? He was killed by the very hands of Muawiyah. You notice the lines. He would tell him, Muawiyah, an unjust group would kill you. It's one of the greatest proofs. You'll see some people, they come, they show how much respect for Muawiyah. You tell him, here it is. He comes and he says, Ammar, تَقْتُلَكَ الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. The unjust group will kill you. What does he say? He says, yes, it's an unjust group. How are you going to prove that it was referenced to me? That I did not kill him with my very hands? And you'll notice they come and they play games around. Yeah, Ammar bin Yasir, referred to as this great companion, despite the fact that he displayed senses of taqiyya. Therefore, we'll notice these types of divergences. On a first level, his inside is evil. Yeah, his inside is good, his outside is evil, hypocrisy. On another level, his inside is what? His inside is completely good, and outside he may say certain things. That's why you see Ammar bin Yasir, they would take his face and they would drown it in water, forcing him to say certain things. He would come back to Rasulullah. He would tell him, Ya Rasulullah, they forced me to say it. He would see tears coming down, dropping down the eyes of Ammar bin Yasir. He would wipe the tears from his blessed eyes. He would tell him, Ammar, what's the problem? He would say, Ya Rasulullah, they forced me to say certain things. It wasn't in my hands. He would tell him, did your heart believe in it? He would say, no, Ya Rasulullah. He said, if your tongue said it, yet your heart didn't believe it, there's no problem. Within the very Quran, you'll see two verses which speak about taqiyya, and they prove taqiyya for you and I. That somebody comes and say, these are narrations. How do we prove our teaching in the Holy Quran if we at the end of the day believe that the Holy Quran is what substantiates our belief? Then first Allah Azza wa Jalla comes and says, إِلَّا أَن تَتَّقُوا مِنْهُمْ تُقَاتٍ. Along these lines, Allah Azza wa Jalla comes and says, except he uses the very same root word of taqiyya, تَتَّقُوا مِنْهُمْ تُقَاتٍ. And another verse, Allah Azza wa Jalla comes and says, مَنْ أَكْرَهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ إِلَّا مَنْ أَكْرَهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla comes and tells us along these lines that except the one, the kafir, yes, he is the evil and he will be punished. Except the one who says something, yet his heart is completely maintained with what? With iman. That you'll see certain individuals, his tongue says something, but his heart is on a completely different level. Yes? This was who? This was Ammar bin Yasir, this unbelievable companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala Muhammad. So far we flipped it, inside and outside. Inside is good, outside is evil. Inside is evil, outside is good. You put them both together, where the outside is good and the inside is good, what begins to happen? This is when you begin to see sincerity. Ikhlas, at the end of the day, what is ikhlas? When someone says you need to be a mukhlas, ikhlas in essence is when the outside follows what the inside does. Yeah, sometimes you'll notice certain people, he does certain things in front of the people. For example, I'm sure you've noticed, in front of the people, his salah is how many miles per hour? His salah is 20 miles per hour. You go back home, you see his salah 90 miles per hour. You say, Alhamdulillah, there's no police. He would have got the best of tickets. That in public, you see he has the salah of Ali ibn Abi Talib. In private, what happens? You tell him, Habib, what happened? Your salah was unbelievable in front of the people. There's even this one guy to lighten the atmosphere. They say he was once praying and he would hear people behind him mentioning his name, saying, MashaAllah, this guy's salah is unbelievable. While he's praying, he would turn on, he would say, not only that, but I fast on Mondays and Thursdays. He had to let them know. It was very important to let them know. That sometimes, in front of the people, this is what riyah is. Sincerity at the end of the day, what is it? It's when public and private are on the same exact level. In public, there's no difference between his and private, because greatness isn't when you show something in front of the people, yet in private it's non-existent. It's when you have a character in private and you maintain the same character and it begins to reflect in public. You see a alim in public, there's no difference between his character and what he does in private. Rasulullah, in front of the people, on the contrary, in front of the people, he would not make an effort to do something good so that it doesn't show as if it's riyah. So it'll be the exact opposite. There's some people in public, he does more so that people can be impressed. In private, he does nothing. Rasulullah and they would put hoodies on their head and they would spread food to the orphans so that people don't even notice what they're doing. That was on a completely different standard. Therefore, when inside is good and outside is good as well, this is referred to as what? This is what you refer to as sincerity. Look at what Imam Amir al-Mu'minin salawatullahi wa salamu alaykum Imam alayhi salam, he comes and he says, within Nahj al-Balagha, sermon number 123, he says, لا ألف ضربة بالسيف أهون علي من ميتة على الفراش في غير طاعة الله. Look at the words of Imam alayhi salam. He says, 1,000 strikes of the sword on my body are sweeter to me or easier to me than dying on the bed. A death that's not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the words of Imam. He says, give me 1,000 strikes on my body. It's easier, أهون علي, than dying on the bed of death, which is not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I mentioned to you before that the Imam alayhi salam says, my most pleasurable moment is when I'm fasting and I'm wearing armor, fighting under the sun against the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's his most pleasurable moment. You come and ask yourself, what's your most pleasurable moment? Sitting down in front of the fire, toasting those marshmallows, or whatever it may be. When it comes time for iftar, you'll notice nobody's talking because he's in a completely different world. That may be his most pleasurable moment. Yes? Imam alayhi salam comes, this is my most pleasurable moment, is when I have armor, I'm fighting under the sun, fasting against the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's your most pleasurable moment, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yes. Because when there is a sincerity, you begin to see pain as something delightful, as something enjoyable. For this reason, when you take the example of our 11th Imam, Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Askari, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Imam Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam, as a child, he would one day be seeing, a man would come to him, he would see him crying. Children would be playing, Imam alayhi salam would be crying. He would tell him, little boy, what have you done? You're a young boy and you're crying. Typically the ones who are elder, you see them crying. Yeah, why are you crying? You're still younger. He would tell him, no, I look at this fire and I see that the smaller sticks are the ones that create the big fire. Look at the words of Imam alayhi salam. He says, it's the small sticks that allow the fire to be as big as it is. He would tell him, where did you learn these things from? He would quote to him a verse from the Holy Quran telling him, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. He would say, do you think that we were created in vain and that we would never be returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That the Imam alayhi salam, a young child, and he makes statements which even some elderly ceased to make in the time of the Imam alayhi salam, that the Imam alayhi salam showed a level of sincerity even at his young age. That's why you'll begin to see Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they say statements at their young age that even some at 9 years old would not even ponder upon making. That's why they tell us Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, he would one day be playing with the kids in the streets. When Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi would pass by, he would tell him, he would see all of the children would run away except for Imam alayhi salam. He He would tell him, excuse me, young boy, why didn't you move? I just want to show you that these Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, who are they that you and I follow? They're not some jokes that we have simply chosen because the Quran tells us or because Ahl Bayt. Yes, that is essential. Yeah, when I come and I tell my non-Muslim or I tell my Sunni brother, I follow him, it's a following because give me somebody better, I'll be more than happy to follow them. Look at the Imam alayhi salam, 12 years old, as some may have mentioned, he's playing in the streets. When a man passes by the name of Ma'mun al-Abbasi, all of the kids run away. We're told that Imam alayhi salam would stay standing, Ma'mun would ask him. He would tell him, little boy, why didn't you run away when all of the other boys did? He would tell him for 2 reasons. So what are they? He would tell him, number 1, you are a good Khalifa, and I know good Khulafa don't do anything to harm the good people. And number 2, I haven't done anything wrong. Therefore it makes no sense for me to escape when I have done nothing wrong. He would tell him, little boy, what kind of reply is this? He would go back in his caravan. Ma'mun al-Abbasi, where was he going? He was going on a trip. They would have hawks. Hawks would go and catch the fish and they would bring it back to the fist of the leaders who sent the hawks. Ma'mun would come back with a fish in his fist. He would come back, he would tell him, little boy, you claim to be so smart, you're giving me these replies, then tell me what's in my fist. He would take the fish, he would put it behind his back and he would begin to tell him, tell me what's in my fist. Imam alayhi salam at that young age would give him a reply that shows to him the greatness of Ali Muhammad salamullahi ta'ala alayhi majma'in. He would tell him, Allah Azza wa Jal has created tiny fish in the sea. Look at the reply. He said he has allowed the hawks of certain kings to go and catch these fish. These kings then take the fish, they put it in their fist, and they come back to one of the members of Al Muhammad telling them, tell me what's in my fist. He tells him, little boy, who's your father? He tells him, Ali ibn Musa Rada. He says, indeed, now this makes sense. He would take Imam Rada alayhi salam, he would give him a castle where? Right next to his, and he would give him who to get married to? He would give him al-Fadl. al-Fadl was who? al-Fadl was the daughter of al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi. Yet then on the day of their wedding, he would invite some of the greatest ulama, the greatest scholars of the time, and he would place Imam al-Jawad in front of one of the greatest scholars of the time, and he would begin to ask them to have a debate with one another. He would tell him, oh man, go and ask Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam a question. He would then ask him a question. He would tell him if somebody kills a certain animal with the clothings of ihram, is it halal or haram? Imam alayhi salam looks at him as if he was joking. He tells him, for real, that's your question? He told him, your question lacks definition and it's drowning in a pool of vagueness. He told him, what do you mean? He would say, what he killed, was it inside the haram, was it outside? Was it nighttime or was it daytime? Was it during Hajj? Was it during Umrah? Was it during this? Was it during that? The man would say, I promise you, all I asked was a simple question. I don't know what you're talking about. Until then, the Imam alayhi salam would be asked by Ma'mun al-Abbasi to ask him a question. He would tell him, excuse me, oh jurist, oh scholar, let me ask you a question. He would tell him, go ahead. He would tell him, if somebody saw that there was a lady who she became haram to him, then she became halal, then she became haram, then she became halal, then she became haram. He told him, I promise you, I don't know, and if you don't teach me, I'll never find out. He would say he saw her in the beginning, she was a maid, she was haram, she was not lawful to him. He then got married to her, she became halal. He then told her to get going, to leave him in a sense of divorce, she became haram. She then was a slave, he left her alone, she became halal. He would give him detail after detail. He would tell him, لَقَدْ عَلِمَ اللَّهُ حَيْثْ يَضِعُ رِسَالَتَهُ. He would say, Allah Azza wa Jal has indeed known to who He gives His messages. That these Al-Muhammad alayhi salam were at young ages, you would see them sending messages to people like none other. Why? Because inside he was a man of sincerity, and on the outside he was a man who would give out this sincerity. Because wisdom starts where? It starts in the inside. Its roots are in the heart, but its fruits come out on the tongue. Just like Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, tells us. That's why on this holy month of Ramadan and on these days we ask ourselves, am I from the ones who are on the inside? Because you'll be very surprised. You'll see people, he comes to the masjid, you'll see him active amongst the youth, you'll see him one of the leaders, yet wallah, inside, you know there are feelings which he's hiding inside. You know there are feelings of jealousy inside, feelings of arrogance, feelings of ulterior motives, that you begin to see him expressing something, yet on the inside there are completely different views. Allah Azza wa Jal says, be aware of these kinds of people. In our communities, they show something, but on the inside they show completely else. In front of you, Salaam alaikum, how are you? He shakes your hand, he brings you the food, he talks to you as if he's your greatest brother. Wallah, the minute you make a mistake, he's the first one to start laughing. You've seen these kinds of people. The minute you make a mistake, he's the first one who begins to send messages and tell the world about the flaws that you have made, because in essence, his sincerity is to be questioned. Therefore, don't be surprised if you see people who show something in front of you, yet on the outside they show something completely else. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma arini al-haqqa haqqan fattabi'ah والباطل باطلا فأجتنبه اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين أن answer our du'as and to have our hajat fulfilled. We recite Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha, following a salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.